All right, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Culture Camp. We have Leigh, Quinn, and David Spader with us. Leigh and David, thank you so much for being on the show.
Glad to be here.
Great to be here, Jason. Thanks for taking the time.
No, thank you. I'm down here from beautiful Cabo. What's the best podcast studio in the world? But I'm just really thankful for y'all being on this show. We've had some great episodes previously talking about the disc, assessments, as well as the adaptability. And I really want to get into, some details on coaching and consulting. I think it's a big thing. It's a big word out there. There's a lot of interesting people right now in the coaching space and consulting space. But I think that, what Potentia does, and both of you, you have under your belt is some actual real world experience. And so, Leigh, I want to start with you. What is the difference between, a consultant and a coach? I mean, you've been a consultant and a coach, really, even internally for my company, and done an unbelievable job, changed completely, flipped my world upside down, as well as, all of my employees still talk about it to this day. And you've worked with numerous different companies. What is the difference between a consultant and a coach? Because I've personally kind of viewed them as somewhat in the same.
Fair question. Honestly, when I first started, I was not sure myself. And then time, and then working with Dr. O'Connor, and then obviously having the time to work with David helped me get it more clear. The consulting is more about what to do and why it's important to do something with somebody. So if I'm talking strategy, I'm talking organizational change, even team design, or whatever that looks like. It's more about discovering what's needed and then coming to help them decide. But I don't decide. I give them the options. We'll talk about a little bit of a path to do that in a minute. And it's also based on knowledge and experience. So I was very fortunate. Was a CEO of my previous company, family business, had learned, had coaches for myself, as we talked about earlier, and started to understand that distinction. The second part is the coaching is then, okay, once we figure out what to do and why, okay, how are we going to go about doing it? And it could be, okay, let's start deciding who should be running it. Let's talk about the strength of that person. And then what are we going to do? We want to talk more about skills. We want to talk about knowledge and experience. And then maybe we don't have that capacity. We want to talk about, okay, how do we develop that? Do we need to go external? Can we find somebody internal? The part that David and I've talked about quite a bit, Jason, is that I could be in a meeting with someone like you and you experience this. 1 minute, I'm consulting with you. We're talking about strategy of a store. We're talking about what to do with this structure, for example. And so we do a little bit more exploring. Then also we're moving right into coaching. Well, I have these individuals available to me. Here's the urgency and the timing. And then in the middle of that, we're now moving more into the coaching. Okay, how do you
Mm,
want to do it, Jason? What do you think is needed? So it's important to be able to do both. And people have to understand that they have to delineate that they're coaching or consulting.
right.
And the person I'm with, like you or David, doesn't need to know I'm doing it. I just need to know I'm changing the hat I'm wearing when I'm having that conversation.
Right. I mean, it definitely seems like it's definitely an intentional thing.
Yes.
And I would say for me, like, thinking about what you just said, like, I don't think that I've ever intentionally consulted or coached. It's kind of just been doing it. And so, I hope if you're listening to this, that you're taking down those notes and being like, hey, if I'm going to go through the day, where am I consulting? Where am I coaching? If I'm doing it in my own business, as well as if you're a consultant or a coach out there, maybe you're calling yourself a coach, but you're more of a consultant, or you're consulting, you're coaching. Like, it's
Right.
definitely that intentionality, I think, is huge.
Well, and
Yeah,
David,
and
I know we've talked, so I building on what Jason said. What are you seeing, and what do you, when you go through this process yourself?
yeah, so first, it's really important to differentiate between whether, from an organization's perspective, you're looking for a coach or you're looking for a consultant.
Right.
Because it's different skill sets, behaviors that you're looking for there. And regardless of whether you're a business leader who's listening to this and saying, well, I hire coaches and consultants, but I would encourage you to listen as well, because the type of coaches and consultants you may hire externally, you should be looking for different things when you're looking for primarily a coach and primarily a consultant. You do have people like Leigh and myself who have spent careers doing both. But oftentimes people start in one or the other. Now, the other reason that's really important is if you're a business leader leading an organization, it's very common now to have internal coaches and
Hmm.
less common to have internal consultants. And so what Leigh was talking about earlier was important in the subtlety of the consultants being about the what and the why. So bigger picture, making sure we're working on the right issues, right? Versus how to is a coach. So most organizations benefit most from a coach of the how to, because you only need one or two people to decide what and why. Okay. And so
Right.
that's usually at the top of the organization or the top of a large division, depending on your size. Once you have that determined, now I might have 5, 10, 50, 500 people who need to learn how to implement that. And that's where you need a coach. So as long as the coach knows how to and has the capabilities to provide the direction and support to build that capacity, they need to understand, at least at some level, the what and the why, but not at a deep level. They
Right.
really need to know how to implement it. Right. So
Right.
that's really important when you're looking at that. And that's also why, at Potential, one of the things we do is we train internal coaches for a lot of organizations. There
Hmm.
are a few organizations who want to go to have that deep knowledge of the consulting, to be able to consult at a much deeper level. But most organizations say, we can get that from you occasionally, or your consultants occasionally. What we really want is the people on the ground every day helping others get better.
No, that makes perfect sense. And kind of going back to it, it makes me, really think about, Leigh, what you did in our organization, right? Like you were consulting, and then I had a lot of coaching questions. Okay, I'm running into this issue. What am I doing here? How do I help this person? And I mean, you did a good job going back and forth. I'd like to say that I helped you get where you're at now. I'm just kidding. But we had a lot of issues. But I mean, I think that's really important, because it's, again, like I try to live my life with purpose and intentionality. And I think that taking a step back and saying like, hey, this situation is consulting situation. This situation needs a coach. And me personally, what am I going to do? Or if I'm a business owner, who am I going to get to bring in? A business owner or train a coach to help, coach my company. I think that's pretty important. And I love that,
Yeah.
Potentia has that.
And another way to think about that, Jason, is we talk about 3Ds in an organization, discovering, deciding, and doing, as kind of the three broad talents that you need. And a consulting, thinking about that what and why, is related to really discovery work. So how are we looking at all the possibilities out there, all the root cause, what's causing us to be successful or not successful, satisfied or not satisfied, and what are the levers we need to move in order to get from where we are today to where we want to go. So that's primarily discovery first and exploratory deep thinking, and then moving to deciding about priority, sequence, and order to make sure you get the best out of that to decide. Now, that's where the coaching consultant pass the baton. The consultant then,
Right.
once the what and why is finished with the discovery and some of those higher level deciding, then passes to the coach, where the coach then starts with a different type of deciding and how to implement. And
Okay.
so they go then from deciding to doing. So they take the baton from, okay, this is the decision. Now, how exactly that looks on the ground may be a little bit different, but I'm going to be able to translate into making sure that it's actually happening through the organization, as to the front where it needs to be implemented in the best way possible. And
Yeah, and to
Right.
so,
join you on that, David, it's also about energy, right?
mhm.
And with David, it's with those three areas, just deciding and just you want to discover first. People have energy and interest in exploring and understanding possibilities of future, and not somebody who's good at discovering is always good at doing. Both instances you have to do some deciding, But it's also important to understand if we're talking to consultants, internal consultants, and independent consultants here, is what brings you energy? Is it
Right.
bringing you energy, helping people figure out how to do it? Is it bringing you energy, getting in there and working with the people who are going to implement and execute, like David talks about? That's also what we do at Potentia, as you well know, Jason. It's about energy, and a lot of people don't understand that. Why are they exhausted at the end of the day? We talked about it a while ago.
Hmm.
So for yourself, like myself and David, I prefer doing one or the other more than the other. For example, I enjoy the consulting and I can do that, but I really enjoy spending the time coaching and developing the individuals that I'm working with.
And what
Right.
one of the reasons Leigh and I love to work together is I'm the exact opposite.
Exactly.
I love the consulting part and digging into that and really, really going deep there and exploring that and spending time thinking about that. And, Dr. O'Connor and I, are looking into the research and why this and what's the subtlety here and there and why and how does it filter through all our other products and services. And Leigh's, and that's Leigh can do that and he does it very well.
Right.
But energy wise, you can see that's depleting to him where it's energizing to me.
Right.
And so it's really nice to understand that. And it really is important for um, people that are interested in getting into the field, or if you're looking to bring that capability internal for a coach, that it's someone who really does excel and enjoy that. I'm actually reminded of a colleague who in a previous organization I worked for, we'd have quarterly strategy meetings. And he would sit there through the whole thing, and he was participated, and it clearly was not energizing to him. And towards the end of every day, he's like, "Okay, so what do you want me to do?" We
Right.
talked about all this stuff. He's like, "What are we going to do? What do you want me to do? Give me an action plan. I need to know 3 things before next time I need to do." And
Right.
so definitely a guy who was great at the coaching and implementation. Um, and oftentimes was said, some of this other stuff, guys, I really don't care. You guys decide. And then just tell
Right.
me. I want
Right.
my marching orders.
Oh, I love that. So what makes a good coach? And then I guess I'd add on top of that, like what makes a good coach a great coach? Because we've all had those, those coaches, and even, coaches and consultants. We've all had those coaches or those people that, really get the best out of us. And we've
Mm-hmm.
all we've all had those coaches, and even, consultants, people giving us advice, I should say, that we're like, you just want to kill him. And then you're like,
No,
I'm going to do
may,
everything in spite of you, or I don't want to listen to you, or whatever. But like we've had those coaches that really know how to pull the best out of us.
yeah. And so I'll maybe give the consulting answer, and Leigh
Okay.
can give the coaching answer on this one. So one of the things we look at attributes of a good coach starts with building rapport. Okay. And so we think about three components of a healthy relationship being rapport, credibility, and trust. Okay. And so coaches start with understanding and making a strong connection with the person they're coaching. Because for those of you that think about it in whatever environment, whether it's sporting or something else, if you have a coach, it makes a difference when you feel the coach cares about you, that the coach is on your side, that the coach, you kind of have a good chemistry with the coach. Whereas the consultant, you want the right answer. And so instead of rapport, a great consultant starts with credibility, which is related to their capability to give you the correct answer. Okay. And so you might not even like the consultant that much. Some people might say that about nothing against lawyers and accountants, but they don't need them to be warm and fuzzy. They need them to be right.
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 No, it's very
And
true.
so they tend to be consultants. They're not coaches.
Right.
Okay. And so that credibility and capability is more important. Now, obviously, you want both in both scenarios, but where you start and what you must have to be effective long term is rapport with coaching and credibility with consulting. If you have those two, they yield trust. Okay. And so that's where Leigh had said, that you really oftentimes a good coach has consulting skills, a good consultant has some coaching skills, but long term, you want to know where your energy comes from so you can so you can build your practice, whether it's internal or external, in a way that's sustainable and energizing for you. So
No, I
that
love
was
that.
that was the consultant's answer. I'll let Leigh answer it now as a coach.
I love it. No, that made perfect sense to me. And I know people listening to this are like, oh yeah, like I know. I'm starting to think of those consulting people that are consultants in my life where yeah, they're not like coaching, they're telling you, straight up what it is. Not taking anything away from coaches, but you're right, it's a very, black and white, very different between like that line of, coach and consultant. And it's kind of, it's
And
more clicking in my brain right now too.
and I'm going to let Leigh answer, but we can go deep into the motivation differences and capabilities differences between the two. And you can see Leigh looking at me as I get excited, right? This is the consulting
Right.
piece.
It's the
He's going,
consulting
all
part
right,
of
now
you.
let me tell David, shut up and let me tell him what they need to do here. What a
Yeah,
good
me
coach
and
is
Leigh
going
will
to
get
do to make it real.
we're the rah
Yeah,
coaches.
the rah-rah. Well, you said it well, David. I think that for me, the most important thing to understand is that in the coaching, where David's talking about in the consulting with the credibility, you have to come with some knowledge and experience and skill around whatever that topic is, and provide, if they want a direct answer, some direct direction for them. Coaching, well, I want to provide some direction. The answers come from the person that I'm coaching. And I want to help them learn how to diagnose a situation and then what is the appropriate response to that situation by first having them reflect on what's going on with them. Right. So when we used to do it, Jason, together, I'd be ask you, how are you feeling right at the moment? What are the things that are frustrating you? What would you like to see happening? Okay, what are the things getting in the way from you doing that? Again, we would talk about it. We'd also include other things that you would learn. So we'd talk, what's the person's motivation? What's their preference at this moment? By the way, Jason, what's your preference right at this moment?
Right.
And what's the difference in that? And then my goal is always to get you to a fork in the road. Here are your options. And if you go down this option, what do you think is going to happen? Good, bad, or indifferent. You go down this road, what do you think is going to happen? Given what we just talked about, what do you think would be best? And again,
Right.
it's also situational. At one moment, going down one pathway, being directive with somebody, giving them more structure, more forming of information, that may be appropriate. On the other hand, it might be a situation where I need to be more supportive. I need to be asking more questions with the people I'm working with. I need to be maybe recognizing somebody or more reassuring.
Right.
Maybe I don't feel like doing that, but the situation requires me to do it.
Right.
So
No, and I
that's the
think
way I
that's,
look at it.
And
go ahead.
well, we were talking the other day too, and Leigh said something that resonated with me. What's a coach do when they have the right resources, models, framework, and it's ask better questions, deeper questions, broader questions. And notice they're directed questions, though they're very intentional. And
Right.
as Leigh said, they're eliciting the best out of the person. And you asked, what's the difference between a good coach and a great coach? A great coach knows when, let me rephrase that. A great coach helps the person build that capability to do it themselves very quickly. And then continues to build on that. And so that's where one of the reasons Leigh and I ended up working together is because we started looking at the models that Dr. O'Connor was building, and they allowed us to do that. We could go broader, we could go deeper, we could go farther, we could be more effective using that, because we could say, Jason, there's a single question you should start every single leadership decision with, right? An action.
Right.
And you should get this, right, Jason? What's that question? Favorable or unfavorable,
Yeah, I was
right?
gonna say that's like I was hoping that was going to be. I was gonna say favorable, unfavorable. I don't know. There's so many questions you could ask. Send me up
It
to
is.
fail, David.
And so we'll get in a different topic. We'll go with why that one's the one we always start with, because
Right.
it drives everything else. And there are a lot of other good questions. Okay,
Right.
But it's not just that question. There's a whole framework behind that, right? And so we can help you understand that, the prodaptive model and why that question leads to 3 more steps that really help you and your leadership team do that. So now it'd be interesting, and maybe I'll pass it back to the two of you. When Leigh was introducing the prodaptive concept to you and your team, what did that do to your organization? And that was a coaching moment, right? A good example of
Right.
Leigh could have made your team reliant on him to come up with the right best decisions and how to do that. But what did he do instead?
We kind of came up with it, or he
Yeah.
made us do a lot of realizations of what we should be doing and how we should. Because I mean, it is true. Like everybody's probably a little bit different, but we have different personalities, different leadership styles, management styles, and so we came up with a lot of the answers, and I feel like it did wonders for us. I mean, I think, I mean, by no means were we a perfect organization, and it didn't end super well. But I feel like how we got there and how we kind of stayed so long was because of everything we learned through the coaching. Honestly, between both of you guys and Leigh more, throughout the years.
Well, the part that too, Jason, that we would explore together, and David's bringing it at a great point, is one would focus on motivation. This is why also David and I, gravitated toward Dr. O, because we're talking about coaching or consulting. He provided me more understanding about how to be better for the people I was coaching and working with. Not only he got me more broadly thinking about a situation. And while motivation, meaning my personal style, is one area, my habits and preferences, people were also motivated in other ways. And then understanding what their capabilities were. So, how adaptable are they? And, we'll get more into that. But it
Right.
allowed me to start to sit there and ask questions of myself as I'm sitting in front of an individual so I could find out what the drivers are for the person. So I'll give a very good example of a situation most recently in with a large medical company. There is an outcome that needs to happen, and there's a leader in a great position to provide that outcome. But what happened was, and we most leaders, including myself, fell into this trap. I was overly supportive early on, not being really clear around the structure, not being clear and informing consistently what the expectations were. So missing the goal. Now the individual is coming up with a shorter target than what is intended. The leader is going, that's one thing, but we have to go after the goal. So it needs to be more directive now. When he was very supportive, he was more reassuring, he was more acknowledging and allowing. And now the hardest thing to do with a leader is you let the rope out early, and now you've got to tighten the rope.
Right.
Here, as a coach, I have to help the leader recognize, and we talked about this with you, Jason, you
Mm-hmm.
have to start with a rope a little tight
Mm-hmm.
based on what the expectations are. And as they are demonstrating the ability to do it, slowly let it out, but also acknowledge why you're letting off and letting it out. Hey, we're
Right.
not going to have this meeting next Monday, Jason, because you hit these 4 mile markers that we had gone to. The next set are going to take you a couple of weeks. We'll catch up. Let's agree, though, Jason, that if you have any trouble, you reach out to me right away, and I'll be right there to provide you support or whatever you need or to have that discussion.
Right.
That's the learning part that a coach needs to recognize to provide the leader. And,
Right.
David has examples of these himself, I know as well.
Mm-hmm.
No,
And and Leigh, if I could just reinforce one thing that you both said there that's really important, I'd like to reinforce for everyone listening to this. And that is, when in doubt or there's uncertainty, you start by managing tighter. And the concept is somewhat simple. And the principle is it's easier to give power and control away than it is to take it back. And so when you give that away, it is a lot harder to take back. Now, don't hold it for too long, because that's the fastest way to chase away your higher performers. You have to give them more power and control over their own job, their role, autonomy, things like that. We know that that's critical. But when in doubt, start with keeping a little bit tighter. Be explicit about why you're giving that power and control away, and that you'd like to give them more, because that's what you want your higher performers doing, out there doing what they do best without needing your direction. But just remember that when in doubt, hold it, and then seek to give it away as quickly as it's earned and it's demonstrated.
I like that, and that's one thing that I have struggled with, as Leigh knows, and it probably drives him crazy. Is I L5 everybody, which means I hire you with zero onboarding, all these no training, and just here you go, figure it out. And it's embarrassing, but I'll admit is so I'm buying out some partners out of my liquidation company, and so it's on me now, and so now I'm kind of managing things a little tighter than I was, but I sort of L5'd the guy I put in there to run things, and I'm having to reel some things back. And he's unbelievable. He's a great guy, but I'm having to manage a little tighter because I now that it's 100% on my back, I want to make sure, really, really, really want to make sure that everything is goes to plan. But I struggle with that. I really, really struggle with that, and maybe it's like PTSD from me, getting micromanaged, and I hated that my whole life. But I'm sure it's a lot of training, which is what I want to get into is, when does training come into play? Because I know for me, like, I have to be doing something every single day to make it a habit. Like, I haven't been in the business owner management of people game for a year and a half, and I've honestly struggled to get back into it. And so, if I'm a coach, I'm a leader, train, like, where does that training come into play? Because I have noticed myself, like, going back to that, of asking those questions. Like, we were having a problem the other day, and I was like, "Is this a motivational thing or a capability thing?" And then they're like, well, he's capable of doing it. Okay, it's probably a motivation thing. Is that an unfavorable situation or a favorable situation? He's like, "No, it's probably unfavorable." I was going down, and I was like, "Oh, hey, it's all coming back to me." But it's been a process.
Yeah. So it still works.
Yes, it still works. It still works, and it's helping me actually. So if you're a trainer, coach, business owner, you're looking at this, I absolutely love what Potentia offers, because to me it's the system, it's the culture system where I let and there's a book about managing through the culture, managing by values,
Values, yeah.
and I kind of call it managing through the culture, but it helps it for my personality and my management style, it helps take that load off of my shoulders, where I'm like, hey, I didn't say it. It was the book, or it was Potentia, or the assessment, or all these different things, where it just helps me rinse and repeat. It's that true, like, people culture system out there, and that's why I love it.
Yeah. So maybe before we answer the training question, I'm going to go back to what makes a great coach. They have a model and a great consultant. It's not they don't just have expertise in one area, or they don't just have the right answer. And that model allows them to communicate in a way that's easily replicated by others. And so you talking about favorable, unfavorable, the proactive 4-step process, right? Okay. So we can explain why we did something. If we didn't explain that to you, you could come back to us over and over again, and we would help you get the right answer for you to be more effective. But because there's a 4-step process that we've delineated in a model that's based on principles and very strong research, we know that's going to work every time you replicate that. And I want to help you do that. I want my organization to do that. I know I remember one person we worked with that. They went through the training, they had the productive, they went back and they put 100 of their top managers through the same course. And they said, David, within a couple of weeks, so this is interesting, when, this particular engagement started with training, but then moved to coaching, partly because training's okay for transfer knowledge. It's becoming less and less effective as people's attention spans get smaller and smaller. So
Right.
that's one thing. So I'll let Leigh speak to that a little bit more. But you want real ROI. It's coaching. That's where you're going to get that. And follow up, after training with coaching, even just 3 or 4 sessions can lead to well over 80% more knowledge and retention and implementation.
Wow.
80%
Wow.
higher than if you just attend
I'm
training
taking
alone.
notes, man. I'm taking
So
notes.
I think it was 82% in the study. It's from a few years ago. If was at least 2 follow-ups, that much more likelihood that they're going to implement something from training. So there can be there's a time and a place for training, but don't expect an ROI on it without coaching. And training's just changing so much with technology and AI now. That'll be interesting to look at. But again, great coaches, they have a model and a structure, and they also know when their model doesn't apply
Right.
and when to get out. And so I love the fact that I've been fortunate to work with a lot of other really good colleagues, and it gets back to that credibility, rapport, and trust. You might have rapport with someone, but you don't get any more credibility than when you look a client in the eye and say, "I know you want to write me another really big check, but I'm not the right person to do that." And
Right.
so, but I know someone who is, or let's find someone who is. That's
Right.
also what makes a great coach. Unfortunately, Leigh and I have seen, we've actually had a career cleaning up after not so great coaches who didn't know what they didn't know and got themselves in trouble and created real problems in organizations.
Right. Right. No, I'm sure I've heard a lot of, friends with that. That's, I've had a lot of experience. I mean, one of my, business partners in the golf company, Vince, he's got a lot of corporate trauma, I call it, where they've had consultants, they've had people come in, they've had all kinds of, stuff. And like, he was so against everything that I was talking about. And then I started talking, because one thing, Potentia has is that system. And it is those
Mhm.
questions to ask. And it's so much deeper, instead of, oh, this is your, your style assessment. Oh, you're a D. Well, what are you an unfavorable? What
Yeah.
does that mean?
And what
What
we've
are you in
tried to
your
do, Jason, is build the training that we have as much as possible on an online platform, so people can go back to it and say, "Hey, oh, I remember there's something here that would be helpful." They can go back to it without needing us. So if we've
right,
provided enough context and coaching, and they don't need to be the immediate expert or consultant, they need to know where to go to get the answer. And
right,
so that's what our tools have tried to do. And with our reports as well, we build the what and why into the human behavior. We built, when we're looking at those 6 factors of capabilities and motivation, each one of those instruments and assessments has a what and why in it. So our coaches then can be coaches. They don't have to be experts in all that back end. It's more
Right.
about, how do I get in, help organizations implement this as effectively, as quickly, with as much return on an investment as possible.
right.
Well, one of
No,
the
I
things,
love that.
Jason, to also add to what Dave is talking about, what you mentioned is there's a form of training which we would call entertainment, where it was a
Hmm.
group of people coming together and they get entertained for a day or two. And like David said, if it's not applied with supportive coaching afterward, and I've had this just said the other day with somebody, is they go back and they have a task list that they have to get done, and their emergencies and activities that they have to get done, and the work is fleeting. The benefit of having those in-group sessions and together is building that rapport with each other and developing some credibility. The most important thing is setting the stage for follow-up, and that
Right,
follow-up is coaching, either individually or within subgroups of the groups that were there, and allowing them to go with specific focuses. That's what the models allow us to do. And it also has to be targeted as to, okay, are we focusing on a strategy? We dealing with implementation of a process? We looking to develop other people to be leaders? It could be a host of things. But training is a good supplement. And I really enjoy the fact that we now have developed this online training, because people have said they can, like David said, Jason, you can go back and you can say,
Right.
I want to go and understand the principles between one's work style and one's natural style, you can go right back to it and click right to that section or that chapter in the training
Right.
and get a refresher.
The technology is a beautiful thing.
It's
I'm in the
phenomenal.
middle of it right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm getting the refresher on the disc, the style assessment.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's super cool because there's so much information. But if I can just go pinpoint it off a question, or if I'm going into a session, coaching session with a client, and I'm like, oh, we're going to go over, this. I want to go back and refresh, my memory and jog my memory.
Exactly.
I can do that, and that just helps me become a better coach. Like if I'm constantly doing it, and coaching is what I love. Like I love to see the light bulb. I'm not really super motivated by like numbers, which is probably why the consulting is David, which I'm like, oh, we made money. You're supposed to make money in this business. I don't know we're supposed to make money. I know we're all having a good time.
Yep,
So, I'm
exactly.
more that guy. But it's just something I love. It's my energy. But I like the fact because of, I know my limitations that I can go back and keep training with the, Potentia LMS that I can keep getting better because I don't want to suck. Like I really want to be a good coach.
Yeah.
And I would like to help them, obviously, but it's just super cool what you guys have done.
Yeah.
So, question. So I'm in the middle of creating my own coaching and consulting company. I think, obviously world, this is, what my goal and my live stream. This is why I created Culture Camp back in 2021. This is what I've spoken, a few places in US and Canada, or US and Mexico, not Canada. How have you, either one of you, because you've both had, really large careers, how have you built such a successful consulting and coaching business? Because I know a lot of, gurus out there tell you how to do it. There's even coaches about being coaches, things like that. But I know that's what a lot of potential does, but you have a lot of like you've laid the groundwork for 20 plus years and now you're creating this. Some people, I'm not going to name names, is kind of the opposite. It's the only business they've ever had. So you have, a lot of experience. So how have you created such a successful coaching and consulting business, or how do you create such a successful consulting and coaching business?
I'll let Leigh take that one. When you talk about numbers and wanting to make sure you're building the business, I get stuck in the clouds. Well, you just want to have fun, Jason. I'm going, well, what's going to be next? What's really interesting next?
Right,
Unfortunately,
right.
asking what's interesting next that our clients need. So,
Right.
right. So that's I would say from my side, that's what it's been, is trying to anticipate what's changing in the environment and then stay 1 to 2 steps ahead of our clients. Then start with leadership so they can stay 1 step ahead of their team and then take it into the organization. I would say that's one of the things that I learned early on from Leigh, that quite honestly, I was making that mistake going in and working with levels of organizations at the mid levels and not having, it would be maybe supported by senior leadership, but not understood and truly believed by senior leadership. And
Right.
so you really want to change an organization, they've got to be bought in, they've got to model it, and they've got to walk the walk. So I learned that from Leigh, that's once you do that and show them how to walk the walk and model it for their people, and then help them implement it. I would say that's something that really is a game changer when you understand that and know how to do that well.
Yeah, no, he taught me that for sure. I actually had a client that I was going to sign on, while back, coaching them, and their CEO was like, I don't want anything to do with it. And I was like, then I'm not going to do this, because if you're just going to laugh me out of the room and then not support what we're doing, then it doesn't really make sense for me. I would rather keep my reputation and not, have it out there that I wasn't effective when it wasn't,
Yeah.
out of my control. And that was from Leigh. Leigh was like, it all starts from the top. You lead from the front, you start from the top. Everybody's got to buy into it. And so that's, yeah, I'll never forget that. That's why
Well,
that's why I was such an advocate, because Leigh was
yeah,
like, you have to be an advocate for this. Now, I probably took it a little, further than maybe some CEOs. because I just got obsessed with it. But I think that's Leigh definitely taught me that. So thank you, Leigh.
You're welcome. No, I learned that the hard way, where just like David said, I was working in the middle of an organization doing years ago change initiative, and all these things that the people were bringing up from the needs that they were going to have to be successful all resided with the executive team. Um, and what the executive team wanted was for the people just to go do it. And I realized at that point, if I didn't have, especially the CEO, but whoever is the individual who's accountable to whatever that change is or strategy, then I'm not going to do anybody any good, because actually what I did is I caused more harm than good. Those people felt that I was there, that their leaders were going to give them this ability and autonomy to do some things that at the end of the day actually did not happen.
Hmm.
And because they became, they bought into understanding, okay, this is what it looks like, the motivations, the capabilities, but also this is what they need to do to change and develop. But they weren't getting that cohesiveness across the different lines of business, and they were running into roadblocks, and it became more of a discouragement. So I also
Hmm.
feel I have a responsibility as a coach and as a consultant to recognize, what am I getting myself involved in? What is the commitment that the organization is going to put forth, and where is the CEO in it?
Right.
Every time I've done it, you're a great example with somebody who is the owner or the CEO or COO or CIO. It's been successful because they are personally making changes themselves. And I get to hear the benefit of that now when I start working within the organization, and they're starting to tell me about how they've changed.
Right.
And to me, that's a lagging indicator, a very positive lagging indicator of that leader being successful and adopting and adapting to the work that David and I are talking about with you.
Right. How in your career, Leigh, how easy or hard has it been to say, or I guess at the beginning, was it hard to say no? Because I mean, not that you're trying to grasp at every straw possible, but I mean, there's a lot of us out there that don't have that are just trying to get
Well,
some miles underneath our
so as
feet
David
per
knows, I
se.
don't say no. What I do is I go in understanding, wide eyes open, the intent of what's going on from the leadership's perspective. My goal is to, over time, in engaging with them, providing them insight and information, to get them more curious and more interested, to see what we could do even better, faster, quicker, with more success and satisfaction, not only for themselves but for everybody. And with that patience, I get chided by my wife sometimes that I'm too patient in this. Only a few times has it not worked.
Hmm.
And I've been very fortunate to have a lot of engagements of work with organizations in my life. But it's knowing when to push and knowing when not to push,
Right.
knowing when to offer insight and knowing when only to share what my understanding of their needs are, not my needs or others.
Right.
So
No, it's
I have to be, it's the one thing a good coach always has to be, it has nothing to do about them. It has
right.
nothing to do at all about it. It has everything to do with their ability to make it good for the others that they're working
Right.
with. But I watch too many coaches want to be the spotlight, and that's not the purpose of being a great coach. You're asking what it is. The more I can be stepping away and obsolete myself and watching the individuals like you and others grow and develop, then my job, I've done my job.
Right.
And I don't
No.
need to stay, even though I have longevity. The reason why I'm staying is because their organizations change and evolve, and it moves so fast these days that there's still a need to provide what I provide, but it's different at this point. I'm
Right.
at another, like with you, it's a whole other level of you and I talking.
Right. No, it's so
And
true.
I and I think that's that, being able to build a really good coaching and consulting practice as well is you need to have a model and a system that can scale with your clients' needs.
Exactly.
And
Right.
so, for example, Leigh and I worked in a little bit of different client groups, and little bit different types of work for years before coming together at Potentia. And so I did a fair amount more of that consulting, and Leigh was doing a little bit more of the coaching. But the thing was, and the reason we both gravitated towards Dr. O'Connor's work is that we knew we were on maybe step one, maybe step
Right.
three. Then we got to, or even level one, then level three, then level five. And anytime we weren't sure, we had Dr. O who could say, okay, David, you're at level five. Here's what 6, 7, and 8 look like. And here's how to get there.
Correct.
Right. And there
Right.
were times when we were at level five and someone would ask a question that was a level seven. And we didn't necessarily say no because we knew we had a resource we could go to
Correct.
and say, okay, is this something I can provide or not? And sometimes we brought Leigh in. Leigh brought us in a few times
Exactly.
because we were different levels at different areas, but we knew we could get the right answer. And then after doing that a few times, now Leigh's saying, hey, David, I don't need you anymore. I can do that myself. And I'm saying the same thing. But remember what we said earlier about energy. Sometimes we said, hey, I can do it now, but man,
Right.
you would
Exactly.
enjoy this so much more than me.
Exactly. That's what we'd say.
Right.
Let's flip flop these projects a little bit,
Right.
or let's support each other so we get to do the part that's fun. That's when it gets really exciting. If you're building internally or externally, a good coaching, consulting practice or expertise, that's when you really got it dialed in, and you understand human behavior and understand really what makes people tick when you can fit them to those roles and projects, and where they're super energized as much as possible. Not to say that
Right.
you can't do it all the time. I'm not professing that. It's work sometimes. It is not fun sometimes, right, Leigh?
Right. Oh, that's true. It is work.
Oh, I can imagine. Yeah, no, and it comes down to like what speaks to me a lot, what you guys are talking about is just asking questions, right? And like really
Mm-hmm.
meeting people at their needs. And I don't think people ask enough questions or, I will say every time I
And
hop on calls with Leigh is like the master of getting me to open up about, and then I'm like, why am I talking about this? Does he really care about anything that I'm talking about? But now that I'm thinking about it, it's like, no, it's true. Cause like how my energy is or what's my focus or what's going on in my life has a lot to affect has a lot to do with what I'm doing at work or how I'm doing with the business or things like that. And so
and
um
And
yeah,
what's
I think
really
it's
cool, Jason, is I know exactly when I watch Leigh do that, I know exactly what he's doing. And he's following a model that he's used
Exactly.
multiple times in his head. There's a very distinct system. And that's what great coaches and consultants do. They know that. And he's
right.
following that, and he's taking you, he's one or two steps ahead of where you are. And he's helping guide you down that pathway. But that model is really important to have, because that
Right.
way he can replicate it.
Right. No, I love it. So if I'm a coach or consultant, talking about scalability, how do I find an assessment partner or what makes, how do I choose one? What is a good assessment partner? How do I know if it's scalable? How do I know if it's meeting me at my needs? Because there's a lot of them out there.
Well, I'm going to jump in on this one. David did a great job helping build um, all the back end and the reports to what would look like something very straightforward and easy. It's complex, but what I could go back for myself. So just to give you an idea, I've been using various disc models since 1980. I've used other types of personality assessments as well within my business and also working as a consultant. What gravitated me to Dr. O is what David just said, is the solution is not always in one area. There'll be many ways to get to the solution. And what I found most helpful was that most people will start with style or personality, let's call it. What is, once I get there and I get to somebody's needs and habits, I need to help understand is, how do I help them adapt themselves? And how do I help them become more aware? Well, there's another model associated with that with adaptability. I was able to expand what I could offer a client to enhance their ability to do better. So I might have gotten a client to a level 5 or 6, let's say, out of 10 in DISC. And now it was time to help them get better around their willingness to change in the right time to change, and then build the skill and capability to change, which is that versatility.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, and this is where I really enjoyed spending more time with David, as we got into work values. Now, it sounds pretty complex, but I'm going to let David pick this up in a minute. But it's very important to understand what is driving a group, let alone an individual. So first, I'm starting with my stylist, mean my needs, my habits, my preferences. I'm going to my adaptability then to say, okay, how willing is Leigh to change, or how able is he to change, meaning my attitude and my aptitude. Now it's, what are his beliefs? Why?
Right.
Is it because Leigh is motivated for me and myself? Am I motivated that, okay, if it's good for Leigh, then it's okay for David? Meaning me, then you? Or is it we as part of this group where we are, so I'm motivated for that? Or is it all win, that if it's not good for David, it's not going to be good for me? I'm going to find a way for it work for both of us.
Right.
I'm going to stop there and let David add, because I know this is an area that brings him energy, and I think it's a separator in my mind for the work that we do.
Yeah. So when you think about assessments, there are multiple ways to evaluate it. You definitely want to make sure that, um, there's validity to them. They actually measure what they're supposed to measure, and so that's one thing there. So there's got to be a good foundation there. That can be a little more complex for a lot of people, but there are some other components that are really important. And so one of the first one is that what Leigh was talking about is understanding individuals and groups, is that you understand what that assessment does and doesn't do. Okay. So at Potentia, we look at 6 factors. We have the P6 whole person model. Okay. And so Leigh was talking about style and adaptability and values. Those are 3 of the 6 factors. There are 3 others. Now, if you don't know there are others, you're going to get yourself in trouble, because when you're a hammer, everything's a nail, right? And so
Right.
you have to have a suite of tools that really, really fill your toolbox with everything that you're going to need. And so you want a provider that understands and can clearly communicate, what does this tell me about the individual I'm working with and what doesn't. Now, the second thing is maybe even more important. There need to be 360 options. You need to be able to get others' feedback on every single one of those factors. Because what we've found is that even with style or disc, almost 80% of people, when they ask others to give them feedback on their disc style, it's different than what they say about themselves.
Right.
80%, that's 8 out of 10.
That's
So
wild.
that's really important when I'm working with leadership teams, because I've worked with people, and I know Leigh has this too, that think they're tough as nails. They're a mean, hard, driving leader. And you talk to their people, and their people are saying, I wish they would hold someone accountable. They're the biggest softie in the world, right? Or the reverse, right?
Right.
That they are truly that hard as nails. And they're saying, no, I love my people. They love me. I'm very affectionate and give positive feedback. And they're saying, no, 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 that's not it. We've never seen
Right.
that once in our life. Um,
Right.
and so you have to be able to get observers' feedback, your direct reports, key observers. So we have different types of feedback. So you absolutely need to have that, because otherwise you're dealing with one person's intent or belief about themselves or view of themselves, when in reality, who has a perfect view of themselves? Anyone who's
Right.
gotten
Yeah.
married knows that we oftentimes learn a little more about ourselves once we have someone else giving us some clear feedback, right?
Right. Clear feedback. Yeah. Yeah. Something like that.
Well, my wife is very clear and specific and direct. She's a brain surgeon, you know. She doesn't beat
Yeah.
around the bush. She gets to the point.
Yeah. No.
Very perceptive as well.
I love that. And one thing that I like about those assessments is they build off of each other, and it's a
Yeah,
continual coaching. And there's more than because I mean I've done other assessments back when I was in my network marketing company. They did they taught us disc from another individual, but that was it. I mean I couldn't do anything
yeah,
else,
yeah.
and now
And
it just keeps driving and driving and driving to find out more and more of who you are, why you do things, how you view yourself, how are, who you kind of view you are and people say that you are, but then also like how to actually coach and be, the type of person you may
and
want to be.
and the reason you need those 6 factors or more in some cases, especially when we're talking about leadership, again, we have productive tools around specific leadership tools, coaching tools, sales tools. The reason that's important is that the root cause is different. So
Hmm.
what Leigh was saying is that if someone's needs are being met, or it's not always someone's disc style, it could be values that you need to speak to help them change their own behavior.
Right.
And that's one of the things I found most effective and oftentimes challenging people and helping them change is speaking not to their disc style, but speaking to their beliefs and what's important and who do they purport to be. Okay.
Right.
And so that's something that's really important. And then as a leadership team or as groups of individuals, having what we call composite reports or group reports where you put multiple people together.
Right.
Um, so I remember being part of a large multinational organization that hired us to come in and help them reorganize a sales force. And so we went in and we looked at it and we said, well, first off, I'm not sure you need to reorganize because this was going to be like the 3rd reorganization in 5 years. And so
Wow.
then I kind of feel like there's something else going on here. So we dug in a little bit deeper. And what did we find? Number one, roles weren't clear. So there's a role clarity issue. People weren't sure what they were supposed to be doing. And it had changed significantly in those 5 years. But the bigger issue was there was a huge gap. We took their whole sales force and we looked at their set of motivations and capabilities. The single most important motivator, and it was actually a work interest, that they needed, given how the role had changed, was only held by 16% of their sales force.
Wow.
So from top to bottom, they were going to reorganize and reshuffle people. He said, well, from top to bottom, you have this one factor. We not even looking at the combination of the other factors. Okay.
Right.
So we've got a problem here. No matter how
Right.
you reorganize, no matter how clear the role is, you have people who fundamentally don't want to do the job. Okay. Style wasn't going to do that. They were style fits. Okay. It was an interest fit, and it had changed over time
Right.
because the marketplace had changed. And so then we were able to refocus and say, okay, a reorg's not going to fix this. Let's get the right people in the right seats and see what happens. Coach capabilities where those gaps exist, where the motivation gaps existed, help people make decisions about did they want to do the hard work of doing something they didn't want to do. Some did and did a good job because they were more adaptable. Or find another landing spot for them. Most of them internal to that company, a few external, but they landed well because they were good
Right.
employees and that company was a good ethical, values-based company and said, hey, if you're not going to enjoy doing this, you've been a good employee, loyal employee, we're going to help you find a spot where you can go and be more successful. And they did that. Very
Right.
different than what we expected, but that's what you need to have a system that allows you to do. If you only have one tool that doesn't talk to the other aspects of human behavior, as a leadership coach, it's not going to work.
Right.
And
No,
Leigh,
that's
I
so
think
true.
that go ahead, Leigh.
Well, so your point is well made. It's something that the audience may not understand is to put together a composite report the way David and I used to do it would take hours. I just did this on the fly with a client the other day. They were talking about a whole new team they were dealing with. And I said, well, you have all the reports in the system to the leader. Give me the names of the people and I'll build you a report and then let's look at it right away. He timed me how long it took to build out an adaptability and a style report. 3 minutes.
Wow.
And I was able to pull it up with him and we were able to discuss it and talk about what's the strength of the team, what might be the limitation of the team, and then stay on focus with a topic and goal and result he was looking to achieve.
Right.
And then he wanted to bring it to the team. And I said, well, we're going to set up some time to do it. So what I find that's very significant about the work that David and I've done over the past, and we've learned with Dr. O'Connor, is we do individual work, but we do group work. And there's work to be done for the individuals that are in the group that they need to adjust for themselves to make themselves better in the group and for the group. And there are things that the group needs to do together, create norms and understandings and guidelines as to how to operate. So, for example, David, since he's really good at consulting and we might need to do some consulting work, instead of me doing that consulting work, David plays that role. And
Right.
we make it explicit as a team. Jason, you're really good at understanding about how to move things more into action, how to get things in front of other people. Well, Jason, you're going to be the one to tell us if we're slowing things down. But we
Right.
give each person permission and a role, and it's very intentional and very explicit. And when you start doing that as a team, it also becomes quite enjoyable because now we start kidding. So, well, you need to put the consultant hat on, David. It's time to go do your thing. And then everybody starts to find out and operate in the team based on their strength.
Right. No, I love that. So, if I'm a coach or consultant, and I know we're coming up on it, or we're a little over our
Yep.
hour, but there's a lot of different assessments, 6. What assessment do I start with? What's the best one to start with? And how do I know what
Well,
to start with?
David will tell me, and I'll agree with him. I want to always start with style. I only want to understand what people's motivations are, their preferences and habits. It's also one that's very digestible and understanding. Most people actually, as we talked about already know how to people read. The nice part is we now have a model and a construct for which to provide understanding as to how they might perceive a situation or individual.
Right.
Then I
Okay.
want to move to adaptability. If I only worked as a coach or a consultant just with style and adaptability, I'd be very busy for a long time. And if you, especially with what's going on with AI in this world, the changes that are happening, the team that is most adaptive and resilient and very self-aware about how to do that is going to be the most successful.
Right. No, I
Please.
love that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's the general answer, Jason. Every situation's a little different. But I agree with Leigh. Those, you start with that, you can make a great career on just those two, being really good at those, become adaptable yourself, learn where style fits and doesn't, and then continue to grow over time as situations or opportunities arise. And that's where you can reach out. And that's why one of the reasons we make it easy to get certified into various tools, because you might be in a situation, say, hey, I need a team assessment now. Oh, I know that this isn't style's not going to solve this issue. I know it's something else. And you can bring us in, or we have other master consultants that can support you, which we love. One of the ways Leigh and I learned a lot of ours is we brought Dr. O'Connor in. We got to see
Right.
him do it, come in, work with the client, under them or under the consultant. And so I was just had that conversation yesterday. Said, hey, you're the consultant here. I'm your subcontractor. I'm going to come in and I'm coming in and I'm getting out.
Right.
So you better learn this. So get ready. Because
Right.
I'm not going to,
No.
you give me one, I'm going to be with this client once. Okay. That's
Right.
it. It's your client.
No,
Well,
I love that.
as you know, Jason, our goal, like with you, is to allow you to have the ability to go through and use these assessments and properly engage a client so you're the expert over time.
Right.
We're wanting to be, and the reason why we built the company the way we have is to be a tremendous resource and support for a consultant to be as successful as they want to be and to go as deep and as wide as they prefer based on
Yep.
their interests around
Right.
what they're motivated to do within their own practice.
No, I love that, and I'm super thankful and very grateful for both of you and all the work that you put in to be able to for me to be able to take advantage of that and do that. I mean, that means the world to me as well as I know a lot of the people. Last question I want to ask, and it's kind of selfish of me, but I want to ask this is how do I provide more value for my clients? Or how do you provide more value for your clients where I can learn to provide more value for my clients?
Well, I think I'll start here and then let David build on that. It's what we've been talking about all along, Jason, is my ability to first diagnose the situation. So, what is the need? Not my need again. If I'm limited with what I have for tools and models, I'm going to come in only with that slant and that
Right.
thinking. But me sitting back, like you said, is this a favorable, unfavorable situation? Um, you know, what is it that they're really needing? So I have to go in and be prepared to do that. And one of the things to do it is to offer a client just to try a couple of the assessments and just let them see what they think would work for them. That's why I say typically style is most easy, but it's also letting them know how I build on it. That once we go here, we start with you, Jason, then we're going to work with your team. With your team, we're going to identify some key leaders. We're going to develop them so that they can further develop and coach the people that they're working with. We're going to spend the time lining it up with your strategy. So we connect it with strategy as well. It's not done just based on how I feel. It's what's the organizational goal and intent and the results that the organization is trying to achieve, and balance the two together.
Right.
Yeah.
I
Let
love that.
David build on that.
I would agree. You need to be able to diagnose, and then as far as creating value, it's to be able to grow at least one step ahead of your clients.
Yeah.
Okay. And so that's where how Leigh and I got to where we were. We didn't start off with P6 in our toolkit. We started off with P1.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
And then
Right.
we went to P2, and then we added some other tools and resources, and
Correct.
then learned about a team model, which we haven't even discussed yet. Understanding how to lead and manage a team based on those 5 factors. So I think that's it. Understanding that what you know, what you don't know, but diagnosis is key. So you talked about not asking enough questions earlier, and while I agree with that, I would also suggest that even more importantly, I had a mentor all the way back in college, a nun, actually, Benedictine nun, and one time she said, "David, if you're asking the wrong question, it doesn't matter what the answer is." And
I like
so
that.
I've always thought about that in that diagnosing process. It's the right question at the right time in the right
Very
context.
true.
It's not just
Right.
question.
Mm-hmm.
Questions are
Right.
interesting and can bring people in, but if it leads them down the wrong road, not always helpful. So I would say that. And then coming back all the way big picture, how do you create more value? Your clients will demand that you grow if you come back to our core principle. Two leadership results, success and satisfaction. If you help the people in that organization individually and collectively become more successful and more satisfied, they will continue to come back to you for more, and they'll ask for what's the next level.
Yep.
How does my
Right.
satisfaction go deeper? How does it stick better? How does it drive more engagement? And that's a never ending process that will continue to challenge all of us. And that's the exciting thing.
I
Right.
agree.
No, I love that. It's so true. Well, Leigh, David, thank you so much for this episode. It was so insightful. I'm going to use a ton. I literally wrote notes. Like I'm kind of embarrassed. I shouldn't have been doing, but I was writing notes because I was like, oh, that's a good. It's good.
That's
And
good.
so I can't wait to listen to this back again. Thank you so much. I'm so happy I took time away from, it's beautiful outside, but this is an amazing conversation. So thank you. If you like this episode, please share it. We're on, YouTube, Instagram. We're going to be blowing this up all over the place. We're going to be spreading it all over. So thank you so much again, Leigh, David. We'll see you on the next episode of Culture Camp. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Jason. Thanks all the listeners.
Yeah.